You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health themes from cinema, television, and sometimes popular culture. I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a filmmaker and professor, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dr. Joshua Jones, who, as well as being the quads of doctors, is a general and forensic psychiatrist.
The quads of doctors? I mean,
it's
I
not
have
the best
great
hand,
quads.
but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Oh, no, I thought you were just talking about my massive quads, which are pretty good. They've always been pretty good.
As well as being known as Mr. Quads.
I'm really excited to be here with you today because the only thing I want to talk about today is the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce engagement.
Oh,
it is the only thing that we are going to talk about today, listeners. And if you've tuned in for our coverage of that, you're in luck.
Luckily, I'm the host, and I'm just not going to ask you the question of how you feel about that. Okay, we want you to start your week off right. So our podcast drops every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then we drop an additional episode on Wednesday where we go and do a deeper dive into a specific topic brought up by the film. Josh, today we are talking about Rounders. And Rounders is a movie about a gentleman named Mike. He's a poker prodigy who tries to leave the game behind after a crushing loss, but gets pulled back in when his buddy Worm racks up debt with the wrong people. To bail him out, Mike has to face the underground poker scene again and decide if he's meant for a normal life or the risky thrill of playing cards for everything. I did not do my anti-plot summary today because I just couldn't think of a good one. I thought, well, let's just do this one straight up. And so, yeah, tell us our topics of the day, though. We're talking obviously about some gambling. There's probably going to be some gambling we talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rounders obviously brings up the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, which we're going to talk about at length today. Okay, so Rounders is a film about gambling. So in our first episode today, we're going to talk about the psychology of gambling. We're also going to talk about some of the filmmaking techniques and some of the backstory behind the movie Rounders. Jeff, you're going to bring a lot of knowledge on that. And then we're going to talk about the evolving nature of friendships and what Rounders tells us about that. In our Wednesday episode, we're going to take a deep dive into gambling disorder, otherwise known as gambling addiction.
I am a gambler. I love poker. I play a lot of poker. I'm excited to dive in. If anything, I feel like I can not just talk about the screenwriting today, but talk about the experience of being a poker player.
And that's so interesting because I don't enjoy gambling. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, although I think, and we'll talk about this more in our Wednesday episode, I think that America's pendulum towards gambling is probably swung too far. It just doesn't do anything for me. I mean, I've played poker with friends. I've, gambled in casinos. It's just, I get almost as much thrill, if you will, of lighting $100 bill on fire and watching it burn as I do gambling it.
Sure, but when you're gambling, you're lighting $100 bill on fire. I typically don't lose when I play poker. I'm way up in my life, and there's a huge difference between the two.
I'm Jeff Jones, and I just want to tell you, Josh, how much better at things I am than you.
Not things, just poker. Windsor does a Jeff Jones impression, my 3-year-old, and it is so funny, and it's not dissimilar to what you just did.
I'm Jeff Jones.
Oh, I've seen it, and she's got a phone to her ear.
Let's do things. Let's make things happen. Things are going to happen now. I'm Jeff Jones. Yeah. Goodbye.
Okay, let's get into the actual movie here. As a reminder, Rounders follows Mike McDermott, played by Matt Damon. He's a law student and gifted poker player who swears off the game after losing his entire bankroll in a brutal hand against Russian mobster Teddy KGB. He tries to go straight, focusing on school and his girlfriend, Gretchen Mole, but poker keeps pulling him back in when his childhood friend, Worm, which if you have a childhood friend, Worm, and you're trying to be a lawyer, gets out of prison. Mike can't resist joining him at the tables. Worm is reckless, charming, and a total hustler. Shocking. And pretty soon the two of them are in deep but dangerous loan sharks. As Mike struggles to balance his loyalty to Worm with his own dreams, the film builds toward a high-stakes rematch with Teddy KGB. If you're trying to be a Russian mobster, I don't know that you should go by Teddy KGB. It's like Teddy the Guilty, It's like just like I'm 100% the guy you're looking for. Is he a Russian mob? Well, his name's Teddy KGB. Anyway, It's not just about winning money. It's about proving he has the discipline and nerve to play the game at the highest level. In the end, Mike outsmarts KGB in classic poker movie fashion, reclaiming his confidence and walking away with the bankroll he needs to chase the World Series of Poker. It's a story about friendship, risk, and finding out who you really are when the chips are down.
Incredible cast in this one. You mentioned that Matt Damon plays Mike, but Worm is played by Ed Norton, who's fantastic. And then Teddy KGB is none other than John Malkovich.
Yeah.
So, and John Turturro is in it. He has a great turn in that.
Turturro's so good, and he's just like playing it straight. And I love Turturro. Famke Janssen is in it.
Yep.
I can't remember his name, but the dude from ER is in it. Goran something. And he has one line. You said just Jex. Goran Viznik, I think. It's a great guy. And PJ Brown is in it. I'm going to talk about PJ a little bit later. Okay, Josh, I want to dive in, but we do have a sponsor today.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to give them a little bit of love. Today's episode is brought to you by AlligatorBloodPoker.com, the new online poker site from Teddy KGB himself. You know the line, pay that man his money. Now you can put your chips on the table and see if you've got the alligator blood to hang around. Sign up today at AlligatorBloodPoker.com and use code PAYHIM for a free buy-in. All skill levels welcome. Just remember, if you can't spot the sucker in your first half hour, you might be the sucker. All right, Josh, what do we want to talk about first? We want to talk about the psychology of gambling.
Yeah, let's just talk about talk about gambling.
One of the first lines that Mike says in the movie is, few players remember their wins, but every player can remember with absolute accuracy the hands that they lost. What is it about poker that has drawn so many men and women into the game, which is a fairly new phenomenon?
2 words, Jeff. Intermittent reinforcement.
Okay. Ooh. Oh.
Intermittent reinforcement is the behavioral concept behind all of gambling. It is the idea that when you have a positive outcome, you have a dopamine surge in your brain, and that is very rewarding. What we found that's really interesting about humans is that if you get a consistent dopamine surge, like every time you play a hand of poker, you win, or every time you pull the lever on a slot machine, you win, that dopamine surge diminishes, and it's less and less reinforcing.
Okay.
But if you intersperse that with the unpredictability of when you're going to win, that dopamine surge stays the same, sometimes is even magnified.
Wait. But are you saying there's a difference between slots and poker?
I'm not necessarily saying that there's a difference.
Okay.
Gambling in general. I lump gambling all together. Now, I know we are going to have
are you talking
about
then a difference between like drugs and gambling because you expect the hit from drugs, but you don't know when the hit is coming with gambling? Is that the difference?
That is a difference for drugs or for other things.
Drugs, alcohol, coffee, probably.
Yeah, it's a little different. We're going to talk about behavioral things.
Okay.
So we know this from studies of rats, mice, and then also psychological studies of people, that if you do a task and you get that reward every single time, your pleasure diminishes over time.
Gotcha.
Again, if you only get that reinforcement every once in a while, that dopamine surge stays about the same. So we know this from people doing a repetitive task, and every time they I'm just going to make this up, hit a space bar, they get a cookie, hit a space bar, get a cookie. After a while, they're like, I don't really care about hitting the space bar. I'm always going to get a cookie.
Right.
But if they get a cookie 1 out of every 10 times they hit the space bar, and they don't know when that's going to happen, they continue to do the task.
That's so interesting.
And that's the principle. That's the basic psychological principle on which gambling preys.
So I buy all of that. I think that's great. Why then are certain people wired for it and some people aren't? For instance, I'm wired to really enjoy that dopamine hit. You are wired to every 9 times you're hitting the thing and not getting the reward, you are miserable. What's the difference? Is it just?
Well,
I'm
not.
You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
Well, yeah,
I don't even want to go back
about it.
I don't want to go backwards. Just answer the question. What's the difference? Is it just the way we're wired?
It's just
is
the
it
way
experience?
We're wired. Yeah. No, it's likely genetics. Yeah. I mean, you and I share half our genetic code from our parents, and all of these things we're talking about are very complicated. That's not just one gene that was different.
The other half we got from the Columbia House mail-in. If you remember that back from the 80s and 90s.
For 1 penny, you get 10 genes.
you get 10 CDs.
Yeah. So yeah, it's how you're genetically wired.
So you are predisposed to being the type of person who enjoys intermittent
Reinforcement.
Intermittent.
Intermittent reinforcement.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a really important concept and something that you should remember.
Yeah, no, I certainly will. Okay, so the movie starts with Matt Damon losing it all. He loses it all and he decides to give up poker and become a lawyer. This is one of those moments where like I half believe it because I don't know that poker players necessarily I don't know that he walks away from the game in that. I think that he's always going to be pulled back, and obviously this is the movie of him being pulled back. But there's something, Josh, called going on tilt, which I think is really interesting. And I want you to talk about the psychology of it. So when people go on tilt, they lose a hand and then they start playing in a way that is not characteristic of the way that they normally play. They start to play more aggressive, essentially trying to win their money back as fast as they can. And I don't think that tilt is necessarily just a poker thing. Well, what is tilt? What's going on there?
In psychological terms, we call it chasing your losses. And in fact, chasing your losses is one of the criteria for gambling disorder or gambling addiction.
Okay.
Why that happens is probably kind of a characteristic of an altered dopamine system in a person's brain, where, a combination of not getting enough dopamine surge from the intermittent reinforcement because you're not winning very much, or perversely having a blast of other neurochemicals that produce an anxiety around a particular loss,
right,
likely clouds your judgment. We see this with folks with significant anxiety disorders, right? When you're in a panic attack, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a panic attack, but when you're in a heightened anxious state, your sensorium is clouded, your judgment is clouded.
Yeah, I mean, look, and to me, it's just as simple as like tilt is like falling into a hole. Like you slip, and then you're going to reach out and do everything you can to like get out of the hole. It's the same sort of thing. Like you're going to start acting in a way that you don't normally act because you're trying to scrape and claw and get out of the hole. Nobody likes to lose.
Right, you're getting frantic.
I can't just ask you the big question about friendship, but let's talk about the next thing that happens in the movie. Worm gets out of prison, and Matt Damon's character, Mike, has made all these promises to Gretchen, his, I think, fiance, maybe just longtime girlfriend, made all these promises that he's never going to play poker again. Worm gets out, sets up this game. Mike and Worm go, take this game down. It's a very simple game, but Mike has now played poker again. I got 2 questions here. Is this essentially what happens with an addict where he now is going to fall back into his old patterns?
Yeah, if you think that
there's nothing harmless about this game, correct?
If you think Mike has gambling disorder, which I think he does, he's just relapsed.
I don't agree that he has a gambling disorder. I think he's just meant to be a gambler. But this is what you would call a relapse.
Yeah, I mean, I also agree with you. I'm not 100% convinced that Mike meets all the criteria for gambling disorder. I think he's a really good gambler. And I think we need to make a distinction between somebody who does a lot of gambling and somebody who has gambling disorder or gambling addiction. Mike makes some calculated choices. Is this a relapse? If he has gambling disorder, yes. But I think that for Mike, this is a multifactorial thing. This also relates back to his relationship with Worm and kind of the facade of the relationship that he's in with Joe.
Yeah, and if in some ways he has a more true relationship with Worm, even if it's unhealthy, less of a healthy relationship, I guess, with Joe. But he's trying to be something different because the other way hurt. The other way hurt too much.
Yeah, he's trying to be someone he's not. He's trying to go to law school. He's trying to be the guy that Joe wants to be with. All things that he wants to some degree, eventually not as much as he wants to win the World Series of Poker.
Yeah, I want to talk about, we're going to talk about when to say goodbye to a friend, when Mike says goodbye to Worm a little bit later, but I think that friendship dynamic is so interesting. Okay, one of the next things that happens, Joe finds out that Mike has been gambling and she lets him go. She breaks up with him. And I remember watching that and being like, why? Why would you do that? It's actually the smart move, and it's a really good poker move. There's something called pot committal in poker, and it's when you feel like you're committed to the pot because you've put so much money in, when in actuality, that money's already gone. It's in the pot. It's not your money anymore, but you feel like you're committed to it and you want to see it through. And so you'll get to this point where like maybe you have $200 in the pot and it's only 30 more bucks to call. I'm committed. I'm going to bet that $30. No, you should, if you know you're going to lose, you fold. but that's called being pot committed. And she says the line, "You taught me this. Fold a hand as soon as you know it's a loser." I don't think that's her exact line, but it was something, very close to that. With age and time, she made the right call.
Yeah, she absolutely did. She cut her losses, which is a difficult thing to do, not just in poker and in gambling, but in life. I think we've all been in situations, and this is not a pathological thing. This is just a common, normal human experience. We've all been in situations where we have invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, maybe even a lot of money to something. We're fairly sure that it can succeed, although parts of us are starting to think it can't. But the psychological commitment and the unwillingness to say, man, I really screwed up here, keeps you in it.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably more true to relationships than I think anything else in life, is you put a lot of work into a relationship, and it's very hard to let that go and admit that this relationship doesn't work for you. I think that a lot of people are in relationships and feel pot committed, and that's probably why it's so hard to break up. And she is right, because he ends up dropping out of law school and wanted to be a poker player, and that had nothing to do with Joe. Had Joe stayed with him, he would have made the same choice in the end, I believe.
Yeah, no, and I mean, she eventually just said, we are never, ever, ever getting back together.
Okay, so this is where the story starts to get a little bit dark. We learned that Worm is in for quite a lot of money to Teddy KGB. And we don't know it's Teddy KGB yet, but we know he's in for quite a lot of money. And he's now put Mike in for a lot of money because he's borrowed money in Mike's name, which is a real crappy thing to do. And so he needs to make 15 grand very quickly. And so they go on a bit of a run. And this is Mike's foray, back into gambling. He's close. He's almost there. And this is where everything breaks down. And this is where we can start talking about, the nature of friendship. They go and play at a cops game.
Right.
Which Mike's immediately like, what the heck are we doing here? It's like, dude, we drove all the way out here. Let's just play in the game. Now, Josh, there's a lot of iconic lines in this movie. And, I watched this movie when I was a teenager. It obviously made me want to play poker. I immediately thought that because I watched Rounders, I could be a professional poker player.
Sure.
But we quoted all the lines, and all the lines from KGB, all the narrator lines. And then there's one line from a character that we also quoted, and it's from the cop when they catch Worm cheating, and he says, "I caught a hanger, Sarge." And that cop only has that one line, and the actor that played that cop is a guy named PJ Brown. And I just want to give a very quick shout out to PJ. PJ was a very good friend of mine. He was in the same writers group as I was. He acted for me many times. The actors in our group, they donate their time. So I would cast him and he would come. He came to my house a couple times and walked me through some meditation practices. He was a really good guy, and he died of cancer a few years ago. But I knew PJ before I knew him because of that line and because of that scene. And so I just want to give quick shout out to PJ. You were a great man and a good friend.
Did you ever play poker with PJ?
No, I don't think PJ played poker. It just wasn't his kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, his gambling was his career. Not a lot of actors necessarily like to play poker. Although I am in an actor game, and those guys are fucking sharks. Those guys cut you. Those guys are addicted to the adrenaline of risk, which is why they're make for good actors. Okay, but after that scene, they get beat up. They've lost their whole bankroll. Mike is screwed. He's in 15 grand to KGB himself. And Edward Norton says, it's highway time. We got to hit the road. We got to become a road crew and get out of here. Mike correctly says there's no way I'm living like that. And he walks away from Worm. I know it's probably similar to just breaking up with a romantic interest. In some ways, I think it's kind of harder to break up with a lifelong friend.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When relationships don't work for you anymore, you have numerous things that you can do. You can stay in the relationship, basically doing nothing. You can talk with the person and see if you can work on it, or you can walk away. Well, the length of the friendship, regardless of how intimate it is, makes it harder to walk away from.
I don't have anybody in my life, by the way, that's like this because you and I are so close. You're probably my best friend as well as my brother, but I don't think it's a crazy notion to think that people have friends that they're closer with than their brother or sister, to the point where like their friends have become their family. And I think that was true of Worm and Mike, where Worm was Mike's family and he had to walk away from. And if you all of a sudden did things that were completely uncharacteristic, one, I'd think that there was some sort of mental health breakdown, but I don't think I could ever quit you. I don't think under any circumstances I could quit my brother. And so it's a really big thing here that Mike realizes that Worm is no longer good in his life. And we don't actually know that he makes that choice. That's their last moment together. He doesn't say, I'm never going to see Worm again. He just heads to Vegas. But I do think the healthy thing would be to cut Worm out of his life.
Sure.
You cannot stay friends with that man.
Yeah, it's funny you said what you just said, because as we were talking about this movie, I also thought, I said, what would Jeff have to do for me to be like, just cut you out of my life? And I couldn't come up with something that wouldn't make me first say, oh my God, how can I help you? What's going on?
Right.
That kind of stuff. And, you know, I think they allude to the fact that he's had those moments with Worm before of how can I help you, etc. And Worm's just irredeemable at this point and dragging Mike down.
Yeah, and this might be a good way to think about it in your own life if you have like that friend who's, you feel like is dragging you down. Worm doesn't change for Mike. Worm doesn't try and accommodate Mike. He just uses Mike every step of the way. And Mike is constantly trying to accommodate and bend for Worm and do what's good for Worm and help his friend. And Worm does not. Worm is just a user. And in some ways, yes, they're close, but Mike's kind of another mark that Worm's just taking down. He's just a barnacle. Are these close friends in your life, have they become barnacles rather than equal friends who are trying to do right by each other? I mean, that might be the litmus test.
I think the Worm character is one of the least interesting characters in this movie. I think Teddy KGB is really interesting. I think Mike's really interesting. I even think the Joe character is really interesting. Worm's not, which is interesting in and of itself. Worm's probably clearly got antisocial personality disorder. He is just a user of people. He's clearly narcissistic. He thinks only about himself. He clearly lacks empathy, even towards his closest friends. He's a sociopath. Does Mike finally figure that out? I don't know that he figures that out so much as that he just realizes, I'm getting destroyed by him.
Right. So Mike's in the hole. He turns to Kanish, played by Turturro. Turturro says, sorry, buddy, I got to cut you off here. Turturro does the thing that Mike should have done to Worm a long time ago. Makes a good choice. And then he goes to the professor. And I really thought that the professor played an interesting role in this movie, because in this scene, he gives Mike 10 grand because it's all he can give him. And he tells a story about being a young kid who his family wanted him to be a priest or a rabbi, some man of faith. And he didn't see God. He didn't believe in God. And so he ran away, and his mother, I think, like snuck him some money. And so he sees that Mike is not meant to be a lawyer, and he does the same for Mike. I love that scene. I don't know what it's supposed to be saying about the movie. I don't know how it fits in thematically with the movie. I love that scene though, but he's not taking a gamble on Mike. He's just giving him the money. And he has a good reason for it. But I don't know. That was a really fascinating scene to me from a storytelling standpoint as to why it was there.
Is this a Deus Machina type situation?
I don't think so, because they do set it up with his relationship with the professor. There's a scene earlier where like Mike had missed a meeting and he said, look, you're going to have to, make it up with your group. And then also Mike plays in the professor's poker game one hand and he bets into them and wins, for the professor. So the professor sees like, wow, Mike's really good at this. So he knows Mike is great at poker. Therefore, it's not a Deus Ex Machina. He knows he's giving money to someone he's seen him be a better poker player than he'll ever be a lawyer. And he doesn't give him enough. He gives him just enough to sit down at Teddy's table to have that final scene. But I don't know. That was just an interesting scene. I don't know if you had any thoughts on it.
What that scene did for me was, the mentor-mentee relationship. I see something in you. I mean, the scene had to be there because he had to get the money to get back into the game. So that's why I bring up the Deus Ex Machina issue. It just kind of seemed like we need some way for him to get back in the game. I agree with you. I don't know what it says. It's a little bit of a hanging thread for me.
Agreed. Okay, so he goes back to Teddy KGB's place, says, I've got 10,000. I'm looking for a game. He's got till morning to make do. I don't know why Teddy does this. I think that Teddy just takes the money. Well, no, I know exactly why he does this. He might as well take the 10K and have Mike owe him 15 grand. But they sort of allude to the fact they're going to kill Mike. That's certainly the illusion. This is not a good place to play from. as good as Mike is, as good as Mike might be at a poker player, this is not the place to play from because you're playing for different stakes. And when you're playing for the same stakes, it's one thing. But if you're playing for different stakes, it's a completely different ballgame. It's like if you only have $100 to your name and you go and sit in a game where it's $100 buy-in and all those guys have hundreds of thousands of dollars. They play with a looseness and a freeness and a lack of desperation that you just can't play with. So it's a terrible place to play from. Great cinema, but a really bad place to play from. And this is a point that I want to make to you, Josh. This was not a good poker movie.
Okay.
I loved this movie as a kid, and I studied it and thought that this is how you play poker. It's not a good poker movie. There's a lot of things that they do in this that just make absolutely no sense, and poker players, will absolutely roll their eyes at. Mike calling time in that first scene. When you call time, it's because somebody else is taking too long to bet. And so you can call time, and then the floor comes over and says, okay, you've got a minute to bet. You don't call time out. That's not a thing that happens.
You can't call timeout and then go talk to the coach on the sideline, get some Gatorade.
Yeah. It's very weird.
Are you sure? I don't know, Jeff. Maybe the rules have changed.
There's a lot of the poker stuff that just doesn't make any sense. But the reason why this is such a good movie is because it's a movie about friendship and following your dreams. And it's one of those points that I want to make of, like, in a sense, this is a sports movie, right? Like you could make
sure.
it has the structure of a sports movie. But all sports movies, all movies at the end of the day are just about human relationships. They're about real human emotions. And so this movie is no exception, even though the poker was pretty poor.
It was also at a time where the vast majority of the viewing audience wasn't really educated about poker.
Right.
I mean, televised poker, online poker hadn't hit it big yet.
No, but this movie put it, for as bad as the poker was, this put poker on the map.
Oh, it did. But the sophistication of the poker playing didn't have to be as high, is what I'm saying, because the general public wasn't as educated about poker as they are today.
Yeah. And Josh, there's something interesting about poker. And I feel like, because I've tried to crack this before as a storyteller, I don't think you can make a really great poker film. I genuinely believe that.
Why?
Poker is too complex of a game. And people just don't want to, like, when people make any sort of movie about a sport, they have to explain the general rules of it to you. Poker's just too complex. And so you're not going to satisfy the poker audience and a general audience at the same time. And so what you really have to do is forget about the poker and just focus on the relationships. And a lot of movies have failed at that. There was a movie called Lucky You, that was pretty terrible. They focused too much on the poker and not enough on the relationship. But it's really hard to make a poker movie because of that reason. I can see your doubting face, which I love anytime I see your doubting face.
I just don't think poker's unusual in that regard. And if you're trying to make a sports movie, I can think of almost every sports movie that's been almost there, but you can't satisfy the audience and satisfy the aficionados of the sport. It's just really impossible to do. I mean, you love F1. You told me F1 was a fabulous movie, and also the racing was terrible.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. So I don't think that that's unique to poker. I think I think you're saying it because you love poker, but there's no sports movie that nails it. Period.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I'm not going to lie and say that the relationships in F1 were all that great either. If anything, I just love the way Kaczynski shoots a movie.
Sure,
like he's just so good at shooting action. You can almost equate poker to chess, because chess is another game that's very hard to understand. It takes years to master. But chess has the pieces moving on the board that sound so cool. So if you want to make a good chess montage, you just bam, 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 the pieces just slapping and replacing each other.
Right.
That's why Queen's Gambit was so good.
Or you can even do a disembodied, the chess pieces are moving by themselves. And that makes for good cinema as well. Something like that. No, I hear you. I'm thinking of I just thought of Hoosiers. Hoosiers was a fabulous sports movie. One of the best sports movies of all time. The basketball was terrible. Let's just run the old picket fence, Jeff. We'll just run the old picket fence.
Throw the old picket fence at him.
Picket fence at him.
Yeah.
It's just, It was just terrible.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's just because it's poker. I don't think poker's
In your entire time playing basketball, were you ever part of a picket fence play?
We tried it one time. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember we tried it one time in junior high with Coach Wainwright. He's like, "We're going to run the picket fence, guys." And it really worked. I mean, it worked. If the defense doesn't know what they're doing because they're, 8th graders, you can run the picket fence pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I want to talk about, Josh, and then we're going to move on. Because I'm really curious about your take on this. In the end, Mike he says he's halfway to paying back he's more than halfway. He can pay off the professor and he can, roll up a stake and go to Vegas. And he does. He gets in the cab and he says, "I'm going to Vegas." And the guy's like, "Good luck." And fuck you, man. It's just not about luck. You have no idea what you're fucking talking about. But he chases his dream. Do you even buy that it's a legitimate thing to chase, to be a professional poker player? Because I do, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Yes.
Or do you think there's something wrong with that person?
No, why wouldn't it be? I mean, it's clearly a legitimate vocation. People
don't look at me like I've got a
eventually.
dick on my head. You don't understand gambling, and so
Jeff, I hate to tell you, but you actually have a dick on your head right now.
Oh man,
wipe that off. I'm not looking at you like you have a dick on your head. I mean,
so you're fine with it.
Yeah.
You're okay. You're okay with that as a job.
Sure. Why wouldn't I be?
I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to stop doing the podcast. I think I want to be a professional poker player. This was my way of telling you.
Jeff, I think that's a great idea. You should go do something you're good at.
Wow. Oh, so I've been dragging you down? That's what's going on? That's why our audience is so niche, let's say. So discerning. Thus far in our career?
No, Jeff, I'm totally kidding. I'm sure you're good at something other than poker.
Oh, that hurts my feelings. It does remind me, though, of you went to medical school. I was supposed to go to law school. That was our parents' dream. And I literally was about to sign the papers to go to Pepperdine Law School. And I set the pen down and I called Mom and I said, "I'm not going to law school. I'm going to LA to pursue film." And she just cried.
Oh, really?
Cried. Oh, yeah.
God, I don't think I knew that, Jeff.
Yeah. And she was like, she was like, "I knew this was going to happen." And I was like, if you knew this was going to happen, if you knew that this was what was right for me in my heart, and you still wanted me to be a lawyer, like that is crappy. That's a crappy mom move.
Well,
or she was just saying, she was like, I knew it all along. I'm sorry.
Well, that sounds more like Paige.
That's great.
That sounds more like Paige.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've got some crazy dream, I don't know, go do it.
I'm glad you didn't become a lawyer. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And I'm really glad we're doing this podcast. And you're really good at it.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
I've got notes. All right. Thanks as always for watching and listening to Cinemental and our coverage of Rounders. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what you would like us to cover next. You can also watch my companion series, The One Thing, where I take a deeper dive into screenwriting, both available on the Large and in Charge channel on YouTube. Follow Dr. Josh Jones, America's psychiatrist, on Blue Sky. This has been a Large and in Charge production. For Josh Jones, I am Jeff Jones, and we will see you on Wednesday, where we talk about gambling addiction. Ooh. Boom.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.